Good afternoon and welcome to this month's show. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with data center and cloud optimization strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Thomas Santucci, Director of IT Modernization at GSA, Beth Capella, Deputy Chief Information Officer, Department of Homeland Security, Monique Bork, Assistant Director for Innovation Engineering, Department of Justice, Anthony Vicinelli, Federal Chief Technology Officer, Enlight Software, Chip George, Vice President, Public Sector at Nutanix, and Ryan Lake, Chief Technology Officer at Kellen Technologies. Well, this is a big subject. About a decade ago, we started on this journey, right? Data center consolidation, then we went to cloud first, and we went to cloud smart. And sort of during that journey, we had a lot of tectonic shifts in technology, right? Hybrid cloud capabilities, sophisticated methods to manage storage and mesh on-prem, off-prem, in the cloud, ability to optimize these data center assets, and a lot of advanced instrumentation that's been introduced to manage all this. And a couple other items that I think are worth noting. One, the TBM, right? Now all of a sudden we can compare an apple to an apple as far as cost is concerned. And much more advanced methods to acquire these goods and services. I think services being an operative word there. And of course, the TMF now coming along with $1 billion to prime the pump, so to speak. So the table is really set. Tom, let's start with you at GSA. You're sort of looking at it from the top, looking across the superstructure. Well, what do you see out there? Give us a state of the state, if you will.
Sure, Luke, thanks for having me, by the way. I think the message of the day is we want to continue to reduce the data center inventory. Building, maintaining, and operating a data center is an expensive proposition. And data centers are energy intensive facilities, 10 to 100 times more than any office space. And the constant surging for compute has been challenging to meet. The power and cooling constraints of existing facilities and frankly, our budget cycles for the year-end surge of purchasing compute is just not efficient and reduces the use of shared service. And finally, there's always restriction or friction between the data center operators and the facility owners, which doesn't generally benefit the tenants at all. But on a good note, of the 24 CFO Act agencies, 12 have met their closure goals. We have 2 of them here today, DHS and DOJ. They're, I consider, gold standards in this regard. In fact, 10 of those agencies have 0 data centers in their inventory. They are entirely in shared service data centers or commercial facilities or cloud. We're down to 512 data centers in the federal government. We've closed 617. And all of this data could be found and more at itdashboard.gov, where the public has access to our data, as well as GAO uses it for the FITARA scorecard. And finally, we're still operating under an OMB memo for an extension of the data center optimization initiative till 2022. And data center closure should remain the agency's primary priority.
Yeah, you really have a, that was a sort of a round one, nice, crisp way of measuring progress. And as mentioned, as we move along on this journey, right, we go from cloud first to cloud smart to hybrid, et cetera. And we're really talking about, okay, you know, where are we measuring sort of the compute capability, the storage capability, knowing that that's done in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas and acquired a lot of different ways. Beth, you all have been on a tear over there at DHS in a lot of different ways, including sort of the consolidation and re-optimization of your data centers and moving into these hybrid cloud capabilities, full cloud capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. Give us the top line on what the heck's going on over there these days.
Well, Luke, you know, DHS, we're always busy. I think I've got a good news story, and I really appreciate the shout out from GSA because we put a lot of effort into this. I think you're familiar that between 2016 and 2019, DHS closed 18 data centers across the enterprise. And that brings us to a total of 57 DHS data centers closed in the last decade. This data center optimization initiative has been just incredibly important to DHS as we look to optimize our environment and understand how we get the best compute and storage capability, as you pointed out, Luke. We really have to look at what we've got left in the data centers, what is going to need to remain in an on-prem data center. I think, in a mission as disparate across DHS, it is not unusual that we will have on-prem requirements for some of our mission sets. But to the extent that we can reduce that, to the extent that we can consolidate the footprint in our existing data center one, these are all of our goals. And specifically right now, we are undergoing an exercise to exit out of our data center two, and we're about 68% complete. And I think that when we started this, in earnest, there was some concern that a couple of our pretty important legacy applications were going to be virtually impossible to move out of an on-prem data center and into the cloud. And we've proven that not to be the case. And as you pointed out, as technology is accelerating, it's really facilitating our ability to move forward with cloud adoption. I think the other really key and important point in this is that as you're looking at cloud adoption and data center consolidation, you have to think about your universe, your enterprise, right? So your wide area network, in our case, critical piece of foundational technology that if that's not right, your cloud adoption situation is not going to be healthy. So we've been working on the network, the underlying infrastructure, the security controls, right? As you move into a hybrid cloud environment, that's incredibly important. And in summary, I'm just incredibly privileged to be part of DHS and the work that we've accomplished over the last decade. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's again, a journey, as I like to call it, that we're all on, and evolving these different types of capabilities, addressing the needs of the mission, and also making sure that we're taking advantage of the introduction of all this new capability, all these hybrid capabilities, et cetera, which does introduce a level of complexity, as you've mentioned there. That's really important to talk about. Perhaps we'll talk about zero trust and some of those things in a moment here. Monique, how about over at DOJ? Once again, you all are on a tear. There's an urban legend out there about how the 3 data center goal got identified at Department of Justice. And you all are really laser focused on making sure that you meet that goal.
Thank you for inviting the department to participate again. We love these panels and talking about our successes and progress in this area. So yeah, so DOJ has had this long 3 data center core enterprise facility goal for over a decade now. And I think as we reflect back, sometimes keeping the message simple, right, and sticking to it will eventually help us move forward slowly but surely. So yeah, we are excited. We have closed 99 data centers since we started this initiative back in 2010. Tom Santucci was part of that with me over the years, as well as you, Luke, and others. Much smarter than I know you were much smarter than me, but others have been much smarter in setting the stage for this strategy. And I've been fortunate to work alongside Tom and others to help sort of carry this forward. It's bread and butter for us these days. So it's wonderful to see. We are hoping to see our 100th data center this fiscal year. We should. We're expecting to, so we'll do a little fanfare for that. So it's exciting to think about that kind of progress we've made. We have closed, as a result of those closures, over 50% of our data center square footage over the years. So that's over 137,000 square feet. So that was a nice milestone. Through these closures, it's about 155 million in savings cumulatively. So that's on the conservative side. And over these last couple of years, we've really seen this huge ramp up going to the cloud. So as folks have figured out their strategy going forward, whether they're hybrid or all data center or all commercial cloud. We have a couple components that are trending to 100% all cloud with zero data center footprint. But we're starting to see more progress towards that end. We have about 40% of our VMs now are in the cloud, so the huge surge up these last couple of years. So we're seeing the momentum there. So as folks have gotten their strategy in place, are getting comfortable with the technology, we're starting to see the larger collections go, consider going to commercial cloud where we hadn't seen that before. And now that's going to start pushing the envelope for additional savings, optimizations, more enterprise agreements that are more cost effective for cloud hosting. So I think we'll see that as well in our future. And we've, with that additional growth in cloud movement servers, our storage in the cloud has increased over 300% the past couple of years. So it's definitely is on the path towards that direction. The other thing we're seeing is it's, as I mentioned, kind of bread and butter. Our data center services operations, they're running smoothly, really, knock on wood, constant, consistent uptime, very few outages or sort of blips. We're maturing under the department's ISO 20000 processes and just really dotting our I's and crossing our T's with our service metrics. And then we've recently are making our billing consumption available via dashboard to our tenants, so they can go in and drill down and look at their cost projections, see how they're spending. So again, continuing to try and mature that type of experience for our tenants and for cost projections going forward.
Wow, that is a lot. 100 data centers. That has to be close to the record, if not the record. And I just want to say, for the record, the smartest thing I ever did is make sure that I hired people smarter than me, including you, by the way. Very impressive story about the journey that you all have been on and are on at this point. And I'm just delighted to hear that. Anthony, how about at Enlight? You all play a very unique part in sort of helping the folks on this journey get to this place, stay in this place, evolve from this place, if you will. Tell us what's going on over at Enlight.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Luke. I'd be happy to. I can't believe it's already been 2 years since the last time we did these. So I was trying to think back, some of the progress that we made. One of the major ones was making sure that we get DCOI version 2 into the Enlight product and making sure that it's expressed in the proper way, meaning that whatever the spirit of DCOI 2 was, that our dashboards and reports and things like that were bringing that message across, helping people achieve not only those cost savings, but those metrics. And so whenever we were doing that, bringing that into the product, we wanted to make sure we reached out to our customers, our government customers, to say, do we have this right? Are we showing you this information in the right way? So bringing that across in the product was a big step for us to make sure that was there. Also, as the world was kind of changing, and as we've seen through just the first couple folks here that are talking about what their progress is, moving from that just on-prem, just understanding what our customers have on-prem was not enough. And so we adopted what we call HDIM, hybrid digital infrastructure management, and brought that into our solutions as well. So not only understanding what you have on-prem, but what do you have in the cloud, and understanding the cost savings that may occur from moving from on-prem to the cloud, and helping folks make those decisions easier. Those justifications for what might be, as Beth was saying, the cloud never stuff, the cloud maybe, the cloud now, and how do you make those decisions? How do you prioritize those moves? And then potentially those moves back, right? So as we're doing that rationalization, there's always that, is this the best place for our workloads, for our compute, for our storage, based off of the given mission? So if there's risk involved or if there's availability involved, that may change whether or not you're running things on-prem or in the cloud. So that hybrid world has really it's really manifested itself out in the community.
Right, and as I said, that sort of that meshed environment, if you will, that you're starting to see now, where it's sort of this blended sort of cloud hybrid data, on-prem, off-prem type thing. That's a sort of this new emergence, and I think a lot of this technology, including yours and others, that is allowing those choices to be made about how one wants to implement the compute capability, the storage capability they need to serve those very important missions. Chip, how about at Nutanix? You all are right smack in the middle of a lot of this, again, enabling these large agencies and across the private sector, no doubt, to realize this type of capability. Tell us about the state of the state.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. And just happy to be here and see everybody. Hope everyone's doing well in this situation we're all in and hopefully coming out of. But yeah, the work that we've done with data center optimization, now cloud optimization, has been going on for a number of years. And we certainly have, and I'll talk about one, use cases that are sort of traditional. As everyone said, data center consolidation was the going term, right? Finding these data centers that could be consolidated, you could get those efficiencies, the economies of scale, I should say, and that efficiency. Get rid of some of that shadow IT, that term, and just people running things out there that weren't being managed in any sort of efficient way, some offhand application that was being run. So we take part in a lot of that, and still, although it has shifted to being optimization is more like that cloud-like experience, like Monique talked about, that seems to be more the discussion now, but some of those traditional numbers are still part of what we do every day. We still look at very traditional architectures and work with our customers to improve those. We had a published DoD use case going back a few years ago that was, for instance, when they looked at those traditional savings, 60 racks to 10 racks of equipment. I mean, the power, the cooling, what they say in the tactical world in DoD, the swap, the space, weight, and power of something like that is just incredible, right? And those guys had, at the end of it, by looking very carefully at how they converged the traditional architectures, they had more compute, more storage after that, over 80% reduction in just footprint, right? And then, to move forward, though, like I said, some of those things are now more about operations. We've had great examples, and some of them from folks on the panel here, where they've done that, and then they're able to actually operate very efficiently. We've worked with one of the agencies on, at the end of putting in a new architecture, they had work orders backed up, right? Lots of things to provision and get to, and they did 3 petabytes of storage provisioned out to different users in 7 hours. Yeah, and the last thing is that jump directly to the cloud. That's what we're participating in now. And we have agencies that have looked very carefully at the use case, because that's what you have to do when you're looking at cloud services. As a couple people mentioned, you have to look at the networking, you have to look at the performance, you have to look at the cost, right? And we've had a couple people that have gone directly into the cloud with the offering we have for desktop as a service. And they didn't do it as a wholesale, just jump in with everybody. They did a piecemeal. And it's been working after a number of months. They actually have a lot in the cloud now in terms of those desktops, and maybe we'll go back and do a bigger deal there. But the point is that they are succeeding, and they've tried it a little bit. It's worked great, and they're doing more, right? So you have to pick which applications, as a number of people say, work best in the cloud.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to see a lot of these technologies that were very fine-tuned to do data center optimization, et cetera, now broadening into mesh cloud, hybrid cloud, full cloud type of instrumentation and capability, which I think is fantastic and super important. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about data center and cloud optimization. And we were just talking about sort of the top line. Ryan, tell us what sort of the state of the state is over there at Kellen Technologies these days in regards to sort of what you all are up to across this community.
Yeah, so we specialize in service provider-based delivery of cloud and storage optimization technologies. And we've seen a huge increase in the last few years of smaller agencies being able to take part in these hybridization and cloud moving opportunities that have kind of been left behind for some of these really tiny sub-organizations of especially civilian agencies. In the last few years, we've seen, especially as parent agencies, infrastructure has grown, we're seeing huge improvements of their ability to access not just cloud opportunities, but shared data centers. And we've put together a platform where we deliver on-premise and or cloud infrastructure as a service in an OpEx billing model. We've seen really great engagement from smaller agencies all the way through larger agencies and taking advantage of these modernization efforts where they previously felt trapped in their on-prem data centers, where they have large amounts of data that has been living local to their users, and they haven't had the infrastructure available to them to migrate that to either shared agency data centers or the cloud. That has really freed up, and they've really taken advantage of the ability to procure that in an OpEx and as a service-based model, which gives them the flexibility of cloud, being able to choose between on-prem and traditional hyper-cloud-based services. That has been a big windfall, and we've seen great success with that.
And there's no question, and I'm sure Tom would acknowledge that that there's just a treasure trove of smaller agencies out there, micro agencies as well, that don't have these big engineering arms, right? That need this type of capability. So the fact that you all have this toolage available, this instrumentation, this capability to allow them to do that, do the cost show back, et cetera, I think it's fantastic. Because you're right. Sadly, I guess I do like the word. I don't like the word where you're saying that these agencies felt trapped sort of in that environment that they're in. They've got this mandate to consolidate stuff. They've got things in classics, et cetera. And the ability to sort of move their way out into this modern type environment is fantastic. So hats off to you all. Monique, how about at DOJ? Give us an example. I know you have almost 100. And once again, congratulations. That is really impressive. But you all have done some really unique stuff over there. Give us an example of a program you'd like to showcase as you've gone on this journey in regards to some optimization or consolidation, et cetera, of the both the data center and or cloud or hybrid cloud.
Yeah, Luke, happy to. We do have a number of great success stories, and I think the ones that have resonated the most and that we feel particularly tied to are the ones where we really followed a sort of process. Through this partnership and collaboration, we have our cloud management team at the department, and we're able to use focused funding to help components advance, get up to speed, prepare, do a readiness assessment, do an estimate, get them connected with the best procurement options, get them connected with a cloud architect engineer, actually provide people to supplement their team, and stay with them and work their migration effort and work through the issues they may have to meet their mission support. So so we've done this in a number of places that have really yielded, I think, major successes. So we are working closely with our Bureau of Prisons component now, and this has been a huge success story because they really didn't have a path, a few years back. There was a little bit of vendor lock-in with the legacy system, and through extending the time of decoy has really helped with some of these more persnickety issues and allow us the time to help them architect and plan a path forward that makes more sense. And so a little bit to what Ryan was saying, I think some folks feel not trapped, but kind of locked in, maybe not feeling like they have as many options because the lift seems too great. And so in our case, it was extra help and time. We're not quite there yet, but that's one we're tracking for this fiscal year. We think it's a success story because we're so close. It will actually, it's a twofer. It closes both our DOJ run facility as well as the failover facility, which was a hosted environment. So that helps us streamline that environment further. And it sets them up for a very sustainable model going forward. They were wholly dependent on the vendor supporting them. So this actually allows them to be a lot more application agnostic and from a life cycle perspective, yield some significant savings long term. So that's been an exciting model for us, and one that we didn't, Tom will remember this one, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we were just knocking our head on the wall on this one, trying to figure out a path forward. So it's nice to think that, this year we'll be able to check it off, and they're super excited too. So it's a whole culture shift as well around how this whole optimization effort will help them advance forward, and they're not going to feel trapped from a technology perspective. They have options now going forward.
No doubt. And that's a very complex environment. And so hats off to you all. And I love the idea of this sort of process, tried and true process that you've been able to put together. That's not a cookie cutter, but let's face it, when we all started doing this a decade ago, right, it was sort of the Wild West. And it sounds like it's a lot more refined of a process now, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Anthony, how about at Enlight? Let's talk about a specific example, if you will, of where you all have seen some great success as you're implementing some of this capability.
Yeah, absolutely. We have over 40 agencies that we support with, and all of those have, DCOI and the cloud optimization at the heart of what they're doing, and Progress kind of looks.
So if you will, you've said DCOI a couple of times, just so for the audience to know what that is.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, DCOI, Data Center Optimization Initiative.
Right on.
That helps us, the initiative that helps us map out that success. And so, progress across those 40 different agencies will look different, right, as far as based off of their resources. The one that I feel very specific, that I can name specifically, is Sandia National Labs for Department of Energy. They have been one of those places that have wholeheartedly embraced a data center optimization initiative, and they have also used the extent of our solution to do, capacity planning, asset visualization, real-time monitoring, alerting, those things that you can use the whole kind of the full force of the product to really drive those reports and analytics. The one of the successes that came out of that was then to use our predictive analytics that we're looking at anomalous activity in the data center, being able to find maybe temperature spikes or power spikes in parts of the data center where they were not able to see that before. So leveraging all of that data, all that great telemetry that they were gathering, they were able to do trending as well as predictive analysis on where they may have issues in the future.
And no doubt some heavy duty computing going on over there in those facilities. So
absolutely.
Great example. Beth, how about at Homeland Security? I know you've got a plethora of examples. Give us a highlight of one that you'd like to shine the spotlight on in regards to an example of the journey that you all have been on.
So I'm going to go back a couple of years to one that is a personal success story, in my opinion. A couple of years ago, when I was down at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the DHS CIO at the time, as part of data center consolidation, had brokered a deal to exit 2 zones of our main data center 1 and in effect sublet that space to another federal agency. What, unfortunately for ICE, we were the ones occupying those zones in the data center. And so while we had a plan for data center migration out of data center 2, we had to really switch the timeline and focus on exiting out of these zones in data center 1. And it was a very short term to move. And the initial thought was, well, we would just move out of those zones in the data center and move into another zone in the data center. And the CIO at the time, I was the deputy CIO, said that doesn't really make any sense. Why would we move within the data center just to turn around and then execute our cloud adoption strategy? So we're just going to go straight to the cloud. And I think initially a lot of folks, including the DHS CIO at the time, said that's you're not going to meet the timeline. So that's really a challenge. But I am so proud of that team. They came together and they focused on the activities that needed to happen. We had some very old legacy applications that were of particular concern to migrate to the cloud. And so in order to be successful, we started with saying to our customers, this is our priority. This is an activity we have to complete. So we need your partnership to stand down on changes to any of the legacy applications while we do this migration. And because of, I think, a really great partnership and a lot of trust with our mission partners, we were able to put that freeze, if you will, in place and begin the migration. And because we hadn't really done this to any great extent previously, we saved the most challenging migration to the very end. And it's a very large database. It's a law enforcement database that has dependencies across DHS. There are other DHS component agencies that use it. And frankly, it was the one that I said we were either going to be successful or I was going to be looking for another career, frankly. So as we got to the very end and we were ready to migrate this particular database, what we found is we were migrating to a location on the West Coast. And when we migrated the data and started doing some testing with the front-end applications, the latency was too great for the front-end applications. And it was not going to work for one of the component agencies that we serviced with this particular data center. And at the time, it was we're not going to meet our timeline and we're going to fail here. And through partnership, not only with the mission elements, but with the cloud service provider, we were able to lift all of our infrastructure and in 6 weeks move it from the West Coast data center, cloud data center, to their facility on the East Coast. And not only did we meet our timeline in exiting out of data center 1, but over the next 6 to 9 months, ICE was able to fully migrate out of all DHS data centers. And I think they're one of our components that is an absolute success story with cloud adoption and data center optimization. Well, frankly, they're not in a data center anymore. And they I think the steps that were really important in that is partnership with the folks that you're serving, your mission element, partnership with your vendor community, because otherwise, if you run into trouble, you're not going to be successful. And then the last piece of that turned out to be a huge part of the success story is the federal employees that worked on that initiative gained a tremendous amount of experience, right, to talk about getting a process in place and doing this. And I recently was allowed to bring one of those employees up to DHS headquarters to help us with a migration of another very large, complex application, legacy application, from the data center to a cloud hosting environment. So the ability to share those best practices, to share that experience, has really helped us accelerate our cloud adoption strategy.
Boy, and those are really some sophisticated systems, some sophisticated environments, and I love the cross-pollination of the skills and techniques and processes from a component agency to headquarters. What a great story. Ryan, how about at Kellen? Give us an example there, if you will, of a a project that you were working on that you'd like to highlight that sort of highlights the capability of this different types of technology and techniques?
Yeah, so at Callan Technologies, we specialize in backup and disaster recovery, which often becomes the dip the toe in the cloud for a lot of organizations.
See that a lot. Yeah.
And recently, we've been working with an organization that has petabytes and petabytes of data sitting in on-prem data centers with really no COOP to speak of, because they didn't have the budget to really do COOP. So they have a COOP plan, but the COOP plan relies on a lot of tapes and a lot of old legacy methods. So what we did is we started uplifting their data into the cloud just for COOP and DR. So get that storage up there, have them start working through the process of what does a real DR and COOP site look like in the cloud. You don't have to have the resources pre-provisioned. They can be dynamically spun up. And they start gaining a lot of confidence in that environment. And then within months, they start talking about, okay, well, maybe this workload can shift up into the cloud. And we do a lot of work with Commvault software, and Commvault allows freedom of movement between all cloud and on-premise environments. And so once they have their data on that platform, they can shift a VM from on-prem to in the cloud, or from one cloud provider to the other cloud provider, or choose to take that VM or data back out of the cloud because for some performance metric or some reason, it doesn't make sense to be there. And it's really been successful for them to find the real balancing point of cost and freedom of data movement and flexibility within that model, knowing that they can take their data and move it wherever they need it to go, and really identify what structure for them makes the most sense.
Great use case, and I apologize. Great use case there of a toe into the cloud, if you will, and really addressing that ongoing challenge that a lot of agencies have about COOP and recovery capability. Tom, how about at GSA? Give us an example of, sort of looking across that superstructure, one that you'd like to point out there.
Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of great stories. ICE is certainly one of them. DOJ.
Yeah, that's a great one, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, when I was at DOJ, I reached out to ICE to learn about their story because I had heard about it, and I continue to use that story today. GSA is also a great story. Our remote users don't need VPN to gain access to their emails or files. The collaboration projects have come a long way. This platform, ZoomGov.gov, didn't exist a year ago. Video conferencing has come a long way. The bandwidth consumption in GSA is between the home internet connection and the cloud, and that reduces the bottleneck using a traditional TIC. And we have a large portion of our workforce teleworking at the moment. And data centers, which include cloud, are 100% essential to the ability of the organization. And I think this is an incredible success story for the federal workforce, that we've been able, ICE was one example, SBA is another, that we've been able to adapt in short turnarounds, which isn't traditional in the federal government.
A lot of silver lining in regards to what has happened over 2020, and a couple of great use cases there and examples of where exercising this type of technology has really allowed some of the flexibility that the agencies, quite frankly, demand. Well, we're going to take another short break, and we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about data center and cloud optimization strategies, and we've had a whole wealth of examples here that we've been talking about. And I wanted to throw it over to you, Chip. Tell us about a great example with Nutanix as you're sort of going across the superstructure there. Give us an example of where you all have been able to really help some of these departments or agencies or the private sector, quite frankly.
I talked about a couple earlier of examples of people using Nutanix to make traditional savings in large data centers in terms of footprint, in going directly to the cloud in a couple of areas and trying that. I love what Monique said about having a process for that, because we've also seen some examples that are a little bit started out negative, if you will, people jumping into the cloud with major applications and running into issues around performance. And Beth, I think, described one of those where then there was, you had to recover after that and get a little bit closer to the data center. But those are the things that people are learning how to measure and look to up front. And those are some of the successes that we've seen, again, coming out of projects. We did a project in the civilian space in one of the financial independent agencies that started out sort of negative. They did all of their SharePoint in the cloud, and the performance just wasn't there. The cost, that's the other thing. You can start to run into egress issues, right? And if you have an application where you're doing a ton of egress out of the cloud, it just wasn't what they expected. Months later, it wasn't what they expected. So they repatriated. We're starting to see this as a trend. And look, can we get the same cloud-like experience we were looking for on-prem? Can we do this better? And I had some examples earlier, but what they saw is they could provision those things. They could run it on-prem with a very small workforce and converge the way that new architectures you see in the data center from compute and storage and networking that connects that, the virtualization software. You can bring that into a single OS, have a single person manage it, and be able to provide that same service in a cloud-like manner. And then as you measure that, maybe pick out a cloud provider that's a little bit closer, work with some of our great partners in doing that. I love that comment that you have to kind of be working with everybody. We have to work with cloud providers and our major systems integrators and be able to provide that seamless experience when you've done the right measurements and say, this is good for the cloud, right? And give them the same OS in the cloud.
No doubt, got to look at all those various elements, and interesting to talk about the dynamics going into the cloud, then the dynamics perhaps coming back into a hybrid environment, et cetera. Well, we're going to shift over to priorities. I'm going to start with you, Beth. And we know that you have a lot of them there. We were hoping that you could just highlight a couple in regards to this area for the next year. What's sort of in the top of the job jar over there?
So I think the number one priority for this year is to award our data center and cloud optimization contract, otherwise known as DECO. The Data Center 1, DHS Data Center 1, that I've mentioned a couple of times, that contract to manage that facility is rather dated. And so we hope to get this contract awarded, not only to manage the data center, which is the priority for the contract vehicle, but also to provide capability for components and headquarters to do some optimization and cloud adoption. The team has been working on that contract for the last year diligently with our Chief Procurement Office, and I'm going to be very pleased when that's awarded and we're finally able to start executing against it. And sort of tied directly to that, in terms of data center management and data center contracts, we are exiting out of our data center 2. I had mentioned that initiative. We intend to finalize that and completely have all of DHS equipment decommissioned out of that data center this year. And so, so when we look at that, what happens with that initiative is some of the applications are going to the cloud, some of the legacy applications are being retired, and then in some cases, the infrastructure is moving to a co-location facility. So there's a lot of moving parts with both of these initiatives. But I think that once we have that new contract vehicle in place, we'll actually be able to offer opportunities to components to begin to do some facilitate additional cloud adoption for the component agencies as well, and continue to optimize inside of Data Center 1.
Some heavy lifting going on over there at Department of Homeland Security these days. Monique, how about at Department of Justice? Give us your top 2 priorities. You got a lot of moving parts going on over there these days.
Right. Yeah. So they're all very important to us. But I from a high level, cloud governance is one we want to really sort of shore up.
Mm-hmm.
We particularly seeing the increase in cloud adoption across the department. Really shore up our governance, bake it into our investment portfolio, into our CIO council and review, into our security. So, so we've actually been working with some strategists in this regard, and what is some of the best practices happening at other federal agencies, and what do we want to do to make sure we're aligning across our governance, enterprise, and cybersecurity committees under our CIO Council for the department. So that's something we're looking to formalize and make sure it's well rooted into that review process. So we can really be partnering and collaborating across the department with the key leadership going forward. So that's definitely something that's achievable. We've started on that path and sort of finalizing that path. I would say so part and parcel with that would be looking to mature all our various data collection efforts. So we have a mature data governance board now that we stood up the last couple of years at the department. Our data architecture working group, now our AI community of interest, align under that data governance board. And then it has, which is key leadership from across the department and sort of all areas, not just IT. And there's liaison with our CIO council. So under that construct now, we have the ability to really look at all this data we collect. So the great data we collect for our GSA folks and our quarterly data calls. We're completing our application rationalization inventory. We're maturing our use of analysis tools. So looking at how all this data can better influence our investment portfolio management going forward, and leaning into future optimization opportunities. So
Yeah,
not just in cloud, but yeah, across the board.
absolutely. Really seeing, some discussion about moving up the value chain here, right? Where we're getting away from the wires and pliers and really starting to get into full optimization, et cetera. That's fantastic to hear that.
Yeah.
Tom, top 2 priorities at GSA. You got a lot on the plate over there.
Yes, we do. We're sort of converging a bunch of strategies: data center consolidation, the cloud strategy, and dealing with the workforce. There's 450 agencies in the federal government. Most of them sit under that 24 Act agency umbrella. But there's 106 agencies that sit under CISA's umbrella or authority. And we're trying to get the word out to the small and micro agencies on they can do this too with our help, whether it be cloud.gov or 18F or the Community of Excellence. Our cloud strategy document we put together with 7 other agencies, work together with the best and the brightest the federal government has to offer. And we put together some clear strategies based on best practices and some of the lessons learned that agencies had. And one of them is just inventory assets. All this direct reports of the CIO should be using the same assets or same inventory. So you have a clear view of what applications are interdependent with other applications. So you can do an application rationalization. We're really going to be promoting and pushing and educating the community on application rationalization, because lift and shift is really maybe not the most efficient thing we could do. You really want to look at the inventory, take an assessment, do your IT portfolio management, and weave it in with your overall strategy.
Right, and have a good examination of the, what you have available to you. And let's face it, I think folks realize that lift and shift is one way to do it, right? And there's a time and a place for that. And I think a lot of times when you are lifting and shifting, you're realizing some of the interconnectivities that are out there that are, perhaps weren't well documented, et cetera, particularly with these older systems. Well, listen, we could talk all day about this. Unfortunately, we can't. So we're going to have to wrap it up with this last question that I really enjoy asking, which is, take us home. Tell us what the future looks like. Tell us what it looks like over the horizon. Ryan, I'm going to start with you. What can we expect from Kellen Technologies? Well, what does it look like over the course of the next 2 or 3 years?
I think it's a bright future helping federal agencies complete this cloud transformation. The shift into the cloud and to shared data centers and getting out of this, thousands and thousands of individual on-prem data centers for every agency from all sizes, that transition is going to continue. And I think it's really exciting to see what happens with with these agencies as they really complete this transformation and gain access to all these new resources they never had before, and also really continue to drive value into the money that's being spent. Budgets are always tight, and they, especially with some of the smaller agencies, and being able to continue to show value and help them realize improvement for their users and their mission is really exciting for us.
Yeah, really to be able to stretch that dollar and focus on the all important mission, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's why every CIO and every organization shows up. Chip, how about at Nutanix? What does it look like? What do you all got cooked up over there? What are you seeing coming around the corner?
Yeah, I think it goes in line with what you're commenting on, what Ryan commented on. What we're really focused on as a company, very simply, is making the hybrid cloud disappear. To not have people so they can be focused on their mission, to not have people worried about where the application is spun up, where it's running. You know, what we've done on-prem as a company is converge all those various operating systems of the traditional technologies. And that is through software-defined code, API-driven code that allows all that to happen. That's the same way the cloud is run. And so the dream as we get there is to have that seamless, that if you can have that same OS that you're running applications and spinning them up on-prem, that same exact OS for the cloud, no matter which cloud it is, right? That is the dream, right? And then it doesn't really matter. You can put things, if they're especially elastic or seasonal, you can put them in the cloud, but it's the same OS. And then if they're static and they're very high SLAs, you need those performance metrics. They're traditional code that's hard to migrate and platform in the cloud. You can leave them on-prem. So you can make that disappear and have the same OS across all of that is the 2 to 3 year out vision. We're doing that with a few clouds now. We need to increase the partnerships to do even more, right? We have FedRAMP now on certain clouds. We need to do that even more, right? Over the next few years, we need to have all those things to make that happen forever.
Real blended approach, and no doubt along with that, the ability to buy that capability in that sort of manner as well is going to be really important. And I know that's part of what DECO is about and some of these other things that the agencies are working on. Anthony, how about at Enlight? What does it look like? What do you see in a couple of years out there?
Yeah, so at Enlight, what we found is that our solution is a data analytics platform, right? I mean, you've got, as we've deployed across 40 agencies and we're looking at all of the different metrics that we're gathering, that data center is a sensor-rich environment. And so we're collecting tons of telemetry about what's going on in our customers' environments. And so with that, we can do amazing reporting, we can do amazing predictive analysis, and we'd like to leverage that further with the help of our customers to say, let us help you get the data out of our tool the way that you wish. And one of those ways that we found that is kind of futuristic, but immediately available, is the ability to use augmented reality with our platform. So it's literally using the HoloLens 2 goggles. You put those on, and you now have an overlay of your data center information projected onto those goggles. It has been accelerated due to COVID, where you have a limited set of people on-prem in the data center, and you can have somebody that maybe doesn't have the skill sets of everyone being able to use remote hands to do those skills. So they might have somebody that is a network person that is, with skills on site, but you need them to make some power connections or verify a few things that, on a PDU or power distribution unit. So you can actually help them do that just with the data. And that was something that, that was accelerated, that I would say, man, maybe 5 years down the line, but it's here today. And that's all due to, this data-driven nature of the data center and the information that we're gathering.
Love that capability and look forward to seeing that widely used. Monique, how about over at Department of Justice? If I look out a couple of years, it's 2024, what's it going to look like?
Well, I think what we're shooting for is fully agnostic and visibility overall, so ability to Tom's point, ability to quickly identify all our assets, where they are, right? Peel back the layers, be able to make sure from from a cloud strategy, we're embracing a cloud agnostic environment, whether that's commercial, hybrid, on-prem, it's containerization, full portability, easily scalable from security standpoint. We have on-ramps to the cloud through our security accreditation process. So mapping out the enterprise ATO and partnerships we need to have in place ahead of time. The FedRAMP process, maybe it will improve, but the reality is it takes a while. And managing that. So you need a strategy for that from an enterprise ATO management. And we need to really be analyzing the data we already collect we have enough. I feel pretty confident we collect enough data every quarter across the department. We just don't reuse it and present it back in a way that's useful. And that's the part we're digging into. And then again, that helps advance everything else, data analytics, how we're analyzing our data, how we're sharing it. We should have a fully integrated taxonomy across the department so that shareability and reuse is there and clear on rules of the road and governance on when and how to share and when and how to use AI appropriately, right? So
right.
we'll get there.
I would imagine it would help with things like TBM, et cetera. So
exactly,
more sophisticated and mature use, if I may, of all the data that's being collected today. I think that's fantastic. Again, up the value chain. I think that's awesome. All right, Beth. So it's 2024 and the DECO is out there being fully realized. You've closed data center 2. We're looking around. What do we see in 2024? What's your vision? I know you have one of what does it look like at that point in time?
So I was going to talk about all these great, network modernization and all of those activities, but to be quite blunt, with the recent cybersecurity events, I can tell you we're going to be focused on security and security in the cloud, visibility. I've heard the word telemetry used a number of times, and I think one of the places where we have some concerns is with this hybrid cloud environment. Are we getting all of the full visibility that's necessary into the service provider's environments? And I think the answer right now is we're not. And so when I look at what we're going to be focused on, absolutely for the next 18 months, it's going to be how do we manage those hybrid environments? And I mentioned, DHS is the 3rd largest federal civilian agency, and we've got a lot of disparate missions. We've got, our components have their own appropriated dollars to manage their IT. So from a DHS CIO perspective, I think it's incredibly important that we ensure that the DHS CIO and up to the secretary have full visibility into what's going on in our environment, regardless of whether it's down at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, at Customs and Border Protection, at FEMA. And I think as we're accelerating cloud adoption and we're doing these data center consolidation activities, security has got to be at the top of mind. And how we provide visibility to the environment, how we look at our metrics, that cloud management and cloud security are absolutely going to be priorities for us over the next 18 to 24 to 36 months.
You raise a very good point there. And as these environments get more complex, your relationships with these collateral systems and these variant systems becomes much more in-depth, much more sophisticated, or certainly needs to become much more sophisticated. So yeah, and the reality is you have a very complex environment, and it's not like it's static, right? Just like at DOJ. I mean, these environments are changing daily to meet the demands of the mission. So best of luck to you there. I know you're up for the job. Tom, how about at GSA? Take us home. You're looking at it from a superstructure standpoint, right? You're up on the aircraft carrier. You're looking all the way out to the front. What's it look like out there? Where are we headed? Well,
GSA as a whole is a big ship. And we're going to continue to focus on cloud and optimizing the federal government using the federal cloud smart strategy. We're going to be offering no-cost training to the agencies. So if you want to beef up your workforce with cloud training or network training, will be providing that. We are going to continue to work within GSA. We are a services agency, outward facing, and I have never worked for an agency that was so collaborative. And we are going to continue to work internally to help external partners, whether it be GSA Schedule, EIS, cloud services such as cloud.gov and login.gov, and the other entities within GSA. And I think, one thing we can probably take away is, would any of this happen without any mandates? Probably, but what the beauty of the mandate is, we get to quantify our results. I'm really proud to be a federal employee, and I am, when I go on the IT dashboard and see how much money we've saved or consolidated, it's really proud, and I know the hard work that went behind it.
And I love that word proud, and it certainly is an honor to work with every single one of you. And I applaud you for fighting the good fight along with the partners and making these promises to the citizen, to the small business owner, to the American public, to the farmers, everyone that uses these goods and services, to make sure that you're doing everything you can to protect the data, but also make sure they have a good experience when they need to use these goods and services. I think that's absolutely awesome. I also want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules today and to join us on the program. I also want to thank the sponsors for supporting us on the show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, thank the listening audience who tune in to us every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.